Welcome back to our CAD clips on AutoCAD 2008 fundamentals. We were just talking about all of our base objects and not to be afraid. We're just going to pan over here, and I'm going to talk about panning and zooming in our next lesson. I want to talk about some general concepts, just some overview. We're going to be covering all of this in great detail over the next series or two of CAD clips. So I just want to talk about, basically elaborate on what we've done here. These are all the base objects, and with these objects we have some other concepts that we use to manage our files and really to get the output that we want. One thing we do is we use layers. Layers are just where we can go in and take objects and put them on a layer. Every object has to have a layer, and it's a matter of which one you put it on. With layers, you can control the color. You can also control the visibility, whether they're on or off, or whether they're dashed lines, or whether it's a phantom line, or whether it is, the layer properties. So you can manipulate the layer, and then layer will then control the base objects. We'll talk about layers and visibility, of course, in great detail. Then we have just general color. In general, color equals pen weight. It doesn't have to be. It depends on how you set up your drawings. But for the most part, when you see the different colors, and here I have no color, everything is currently color 7, which is white. When you start to include color and layers, the color really controls the pen weight. So red might be a thin line when you print it out, and blue might be a heavier line, because as you zoom in and out, you'll notice these lines really don't get any wider or any thinner because they're lines. If you use a polyline, you can add width to it. So how we control how heavy the pens are to get some definition when we print out our drawings, we add color. Color gives us our pen weight. We can group different objects here and create what are called blocks. A sample block might be a piece of furniture, it might be a toilet, it might be a cam shaft, it might be a gear or a keyway or an electrical symbol, anything that you want to take, and you can group together various lines and arcs and circles and polylines and hatches, and then you can create a block of that object. You can save that block outside of your drawing file as its own DWG file, and then you have a block library where you have all of your components. And the whole idea, of course, in AutoCAD is to have this very vast library of blocks where you can just start inserting objects. You don't have to redraw them from lines and arcs all the time because you've already got it created as a block. Next, we have something called an XREF. This is a little more advanced, and basically you can insert one AutoCAD file into another AutoCAD file, and that external file, XREF, can be drawn and controlled by someone else, and then it'll update into your file. So it's a linked AutoCAD file. That's what an XREF is. We have scale factor. I have an asterisk here because scale factor is very important, as I mentioned earlier. The scale factor of a map drawing is going to be, 1 to 50,000 or 1 to 100 or 1,000 or 1 to 250,000, okay? Maybe you're drawing, a football stadium. Your scale factor might only be 1 to 500 or 1 to 200. And then if you draw something small like, maybe a piece of furniture or, a laptop, or something you're designing some industrial object that's small, a mechanical part of, a carburetor or anything, then your scale factor is going to be 1 to 1 or 1 to 5 or 1 to 10, right? Depending on the detail level you want. So scale factor is very important, and that comes into play. We'll talk about that. We have our sheets and title blocks. Ultimately, we're going to draw objects, and then we're going to print them out onto paper, and then we're going to use them for something. We can choose not to print it out, which is fine, but for the most part, we want to get a documentation or a hard copy, and that's when we have our sheets and our title blocks. It has the information drawn by and scale and the date of the drawing and the project name and who the consultants are and where the north arrow is and maybe a legend or something. So that's all part of a title block or a sheet. Printing in AutoCAD is great. You just basically say print this area and print it at a certain scale, and then it prints out perfectly every time if you've got your printer all set up, and we'll talk about that. So then we have file management, regular old computer stuff. Save and open and save as and all that stuff. That's no different in AutoCAD. AutoCAD also creates a .bak file. Okay, AutoCAD files are .dwg files. Okay, so normal file management. We have fonts. We have different fonts that I've talked about. This is Arial, but we can use any other font. Try to keep your fonts not too fancy because they'll slow the drawing down. If you have a lot of text and you have some elaborate font, okay, be careful because it might slow you down. We have solid objects. We have a solid object over here. I'm just going to go into my 3D view and set to be southwest isometric because I promised you I'd do this in the last CAD clip. There's a solid object. I just happen to be looking at it in wireframe over here, but just as an example, I'm going to go back here. This is my 3D navigate. We're going to talk about this dashboard. I'm going to go back to my top view, zoom back down inside of over here. So we have solid objects. Solids are a little bit different from your regular 2D objects over here. Okay, we have all of our tools down in here. We have the ortho button and snap and object snap. We'll learn the difference between the two. We have O tracking and we have polar tracking, and we have the DUCS and the UCS command. So different tools here. Mainly we use the ortho, we use polar, we use object tracking, and this is just so we can accurately create our geometry by grabbing endpoints and making sure things are exactly 90 degrees or exactly 45 degrees. So these are our drafting tools inside of here to make sure that while we draw, our objects are snapping to the right endpoints and keeping the model accurate. Okay, so drafting tools over here. We have some visual styles we'll talk about where we can change our visual style to be shaded or wireframe or 2D or maybe shaded with squiggly lines. You can kind of add jittered effect so that it looks like it's been hand drawn. And then selection sets, selecting objects. Okay, you've got all these objects that you've got in here, including blocks and everything else, and then you want to be able to select them. If you click on one, in the beginning it's going to tell you how to select multiple objects. It just so happens I grabbed a solid. I'm going to hit escape on my keyboard to get rid of that. So there's many ways to select objects. We can just click in the middle of nowhere and go like this and go to the left, click, and it'll automatically select a bunch of objects. It's going to continuously come up with this dialog box because I've included a solid until I hit don't show, but I'm just going to close it for now. So selecting objects. When you want to select them to move or trim or extend, we're going to teach you all the different tricks on how to actually select what you want. AutoCAD has a very extensive different ways to select objects. Many ways to select and unselect and reselect, and all kinds of neat ways. You can use fencing and crossing polygon and window polygon and previous and last and all kinds of stuff. So selection sets, we're going to do a separate CAD clip on all of these, of course. So just some different concepts here that I want to get out front to kind of bit of a prelude of what's to come in our many lessons to complement our base objects over here.